This comes back to something that happened when I was about 7 years of age. I told the story for the first time last week, and I'll just tell you now because I think it's a really interesting one. So what happened, there was this summer, it was a fantastic summer. I remember very clearly, I don't remember what year it was, but it's easy to find out because I remember Chris de Burgh was on the radio. He was #1 for 13 weeks with Lady in Red. Lady in Red. And it was a long, hot summer. We were only kids at the time. Myself and my sisters were playing outside. It was really hot, and it was very, very hot for days and days and days and days and days. So we had a hose pipe, and we were spraying each other with hose pipes, and we were getting all having loads of fun. And we used to make those, I don't know if you've ever seen, if you make a very fine spray, if you just stop the nozzle, you get a very, very fine, like a mist almost, right? So you get this mist from the hose pipe, and you can make rainbows, right? I remember these rainbows. And what I remember distinctly about it is the smell. There's a particular smell that comes from a very fine mist. It's like a summery kind of dew smell, right? You know, if you ever smell, do you know this smell I'm talking about? It's kind of very, and I was basically there noticing that smell and just listening to music, and there's a very clear picture of what was going on. And I said, and this got this thought, I just don't know where it came from. It says, you know, what if there's only 400 people in the world? What? Where did that thought come from? He says, what if there's only 400 people in the world? That was an interesting thought, so I played with it. The funny thing, because it's such a compelling, powerful memory for me, that thought never left me. And over the years, it's popped into my memory, especially when I get that smell, or I hear Chris de Burgh on the radio, or something happens that reminds me of long, hot summers, and I remember that, oh yeah, why does that keep coming back? Well, of course, it's an anchor, right? And I realized that the thing is, if I look at the whole body of knowledge about NLP, maybe what it means is that at some level, my unconscious is saying, you know, there are 400 people in your life that you're going to come across that are going to be part of that journey that you're on. And the thing is, if you don't know who they are, you don't kind of pick and choose the 400, do you? But you do go looking for them. So I guess what I've been doing at an unconscious level for my whole life is looking for those 400. Right? The way I look at it is like, if you imagine you're in a football stadium, okay, and there's 50,000 people there, but say there's actually only 400, what does that mean? Well, for me, it means that there's, you know, if you imagine yourself in a football stadium, you can probably see about a dozen people around you in terms of the detail. You can hear their voice. You can probably smell the popcorn that they're eating. You can experience them within your direct experience. But after about 12 or 15 people, they kind of fade into kind of like a background. Does that make sense? It's kind of, you don't really notice any sort of individual qualities. They just become part of a whole group, right? So everybody else just becomes part of the background. And I felt like, you know, there's a lot of people you meet who just don't really, they don't become part of your life, they just kind of, they're part of the background the whole time, you know. And the other people, they become almost like they become part of your experience of your journey. If you were to write a book, they would be characters in the book, right? Then I realized, and we'll look at this in a moment when we look at perceptions, projection, the law of equivalences, that that's exactly what Carl Jung talked about when we said perceptions, projection. You take all your experiences and you project it onto people around you, don't you? Right? So that is your projection. It's all from within. And so I decided, I don't know what age I was, I decided that if I was to meet somebody for the first time, either to introduce myself or I was to cross them, that maybe they're one of the 400, but I don't know which of them are the 400, which aren't. So I have to treat everybody as if they're part of the 400, which is really interesting because it sets up a certain, I guess, a certain appreciation for other people's experiences. So no matter how much you like someone or how much you detest someone, what if they're one of those 400 people? What if they're the person that you need to get it from? You need to get, what's that about? What's that one thing you need to get? What if it was them? Then you couldn't really hate that person. You couldn't really be angry at that person because they could be the reason, they could be the projection that you're putting out there that allows you to say, you know what? This person is here because I'm projecting my stuff onto them, and if I get what the lesson is about for me, I evolve, right? And I've had that experience. I've had situations where there's somebody I've had some sort of a conflict with or some sort of a difference with, and the person keeps coming into my life, and then something has happened, I've had a realization, or I've changed something, or I've done some sort of process, and that person disappeared and I never heard from them again, right? It's just like they just stopped coming into your life. Why? Because I learned the lesson. I got it. Ah, okay, right? Like, that's what I was doing. I was blaming them, but actually it was me. I got the lesson, the person disappeared. Did they really disappear? They're probably still there, but they fade into the background now because they don't have any meaning in your life because there's nothing to learn there. Yeah. So that was one of the big things for me in looking at, you know, what does excellence mean? What does everybody in your environment mean? And is there anything about that that's important? And of course there is. So I guess the 400 for me is, I guess, if I was to set a goal for my own my life, my legacy, would be to find those 400 people, not knowing whether they are the 400 people or not. Because I realized that, you know, if you think about leaving an impact, making a difference in the world, imagine you actually found 400 people that you were able to bring experience and knowledge and wisdom and, you know, help them evolve on their journey. Just 400. Not like, you know, Twitter, I've got 18,000 fans, and, you know, Instagram, I've got 4 million fans, you know, fans, whatever that means. Because that all becomes part of the background noise. But imagine you actually influenced 400 people in your life, right? Just 400. And imagine those people each influenced 400 people in their lives, right? With the lesson that you've passed on, but also other lessons that they've taken on board as well because of the karmic implications, because the moral, ethical sort of attitude you take, because of the kindness and the willingness to serve other people. If you were to do all that, and then a third generation of those people were to each impact 400 people, you get 400 by 400 by 400, which is 400 cubed, which is 64 million people. Now that's interesting, because that's the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans winning in the last presidential election. Imagine you had the influence over generations of actually being able to change the direction of history, right? For me, that is a really, really powerful reason to actually run a business like Transforming People Academy. Not because I think I can make a difference in this generation, but that the impact it would leave later on. It's like somebody said to me once, I saw it probably in some Facebook post, you know, a wise man is a man who plants a tree who will never see it grow. You'll never see it grow to maturity. Because, you know, if you plant an oak tree, it takes 100 years to grow. Somebody doesn't say, well, plant this tree, but it's, you know, in 7 years' time, I'm going to chop it down. No, you don't do that. You plant an oak tree because you want to come to maturity, even though it might be 2 generations later. When's the best time to plant a tree? Well, the first answer is 30 years ago, right? When's the second best time to plant a tree? Right now.